right. This is Ehsan Sadri, ophthalmologist at the Visionary Eye Institute in Newport Beach, California, here with my really good friend at OIS AAO 2019. This is Miki from Verana Health. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
You having a good meeting so far?
So far, so good. It gets busier every year.
Yeah. It's, I just saw you a couple of nights ago. It feels like it was 2 weeks ago.
And it does. There have been a lot of meetings between that and now.
Yeah, and
So,
I understand you're flying out of my neck of the woods, so we got to catch you next time.
next time.
So tell me, update me a little bit. Tell us what you're excited about.
Got it. Well, what I'm excited about is that we are, as you know, we are the analytics and curation partner to the American Academy of Ophthalmology's IRIS registry, which is the largest specialty medicine database in the world, period. It is 80% of all ophthalmology records curated and analyzed in an EHR data set. I've never seen anything this large.
That's remarkable.
In the EHR space, ever.
When was this started?
It was started about 6 years ago.
Gotcha.
By the American Academy of Ophthalmology. We became their exclusive partner about 1.5 years ago.
Got it. What was that dialogue like? So will you take me through that? So
Yeah, I wish I could take credit for that. It actually predates me. So this board of ours actually put this company together. It was 3 different organizations that came together. It was the American Academy of Ophthalmology. It was some healthcare data entrepreneurs who had been thinking about this, and then some really good industry leading investors, Google Ventures and a few others that had invested into us. And they came together and they came up with a template for this. A few months later, they asked me to be CEO. So in many ways, I didn't help construct that deal, but when I saw it, I was fascinated. I'd never seen anything this good in the EHR space before. I've been doing this for about 20 years, 10 years as a healthcare data operator. I've run some pretty large businesses and sold a couple of others, and I had never seen anything that was near this size, near this depth, and importantly, not with anything that we could have exclusive rights around. You could build a company around those things, and that's what we decided to do.
So your Verana was your idea? Was it this is something you came up with to educate the for those who don't know what it is?
Right.
How was the initial?
Right. So I think Verana can be thought of as being more the idea of the founders who are more like David Park, who is the CEO of the American Academy of Ophthalmology, physician, has been doing that for a lot of years and helped build the IRIS data set 6 years ago. So I think of him as one of the founders. I also think, frankly, one of our founders was one of our investors. And that investor had done this many other times with other big data companies like Foundation Medicine and Flatiron Health and others, and understood that there was something really uniquely special about the specialty registry data space. No one had tapped into the society data space before. No one understood how to start aggregating that data and cleaning it up and curating it and getting it ready to become regulatory grade data that could one day be submitted to the FDA. No one else got that. It was these founders of our company that did that about, really going on 2 years ago when they came up with the idea for this.
Okay, so now take me through that. So I'm an ophthalmologist and I'm doing 10 cataracts a week. How is this relatable to me?
Right.
That's not me, but in general.
Right.
To our constituents.
Right. First of all, we exist to help ophthalmologists. We exist to help providers. We exist to help patients every day. That's who we are. In fact, when we talk a little bit about, perhaps who I am, I come from a background of doing global public health before I moved into private health, and there is something very deeply ingrained at Verana about helping the patient, helping the provider. We do that every day. When you walk the halls of Verana in Knoxville or San Francisco or New York, you'll see that when you talk to the patients. But at the ophthalmologist level, what you'll see is a series of practice insight softwares that'll help you understand how to run your own practice. It'll teach you about what care patterns look like. You can benchmark yourselves against other regions in the country. You can look at what your prescription data record looks like. You can see a lot of information there that you just can't capture in other places, all centralized and captured for you. On the flip side of that is that we use that data that's coming out of your practice to help generate insights for research and development. So we
talked about that briefly before we started.
That's right.
Yeah, take us through that. That's pretty exciting.
Right. Yeah. So imagine a world where you're getting 80% of the country's record. Now you're cleaning up that data, you're curating it, you're getting it ready for true business insights level use cases. And you're applying that towards, first, let's start with the simple things. You're applying it towards, how is my drug doing in the marketplace? business insights around how is my drug doing in the marketplace, or then you take it to the next level and say, well, let's start putting together some research so that we can understand what the health economics and outcomes look like here, so that we can submit that back to our own payers or regulatory bodies. And then you take that up yet another notch and you say, interesting, now I'm trying to recruit patients for clinical trials, or I'm trying to identify sites all across the country that have just the right kinds of patients. We have an ability to go back to the provider, and the provider then chooses to opt in themselves and their practice and then ultimately their patient into these trials. So now take that yet another level, and you're talking about getting patients who have deep need that are otherwise unable to get into clinical trials, the access to these trials. And you have, on the flip side of that, life sciences organizations that have a really tough time recruiting.
Sure.
Often rare disease patients that are impossible to find, and we bridge that divide. So we allow that to happen. Now,
That's great. No, keep going. No, go ahead. No, keep going.
There's one more part to our business.
I love it.
You can tell I get excited about this.
No, it's good.
The last part of our business.
I'm just going to walk right out. Love it. No, keep going.
The last part of our business is that we're also doing now work with regulatory bodies. So we're getting our data to a level where it could be submitted to these regulatory bodies as part of submissions to the FDA. Now, look, we're not quite there. That's a lot of work. That takes a tremendous amount of science and clinical expertise inside the organization that we're building.
Okay.
And we're spending a lot of the next year getting to that level, but ultimately we will be ready for that regulatory grade submission.
So when you say that, explain to me a little bit more, dive in a little bit deeper.
Sure.
So what does that mean? Does that mean you're aggregating, curing the data, and then you're able to now take it to the agency on outcomes-based, evidence-based?
Exactly. That's right. So you can take a set of outcomes to the agency, or you can potentially put together a cohort of patients that mimic, for example, a control group. And that control group can be then used as part of the FDA submission. In a world where real-world evidence is being used as a potential, at least displacement, not complete replacement, but displacement of certain patients you have to enroll into trials, you can speed up the pace of innovation in this country tremendously. Which is
something we really desperately need.
We need that. Yeah. And the cost of running these trials, the size of these trials, the length of these trials are all things that we can help impact.
Yeah, it's very inefficient, isn't it? So you're adding a huge amount of value.
We are. And we're giving a lot back to the physician while we do it, which is what we love. We're a physician-first organization. When you walk the halls of Verana, you hear that up and down the organization. We live to support the physicians and ultimately their patients.
So how does Verana monetize it? How do you keep the lights on?
How do we keep our lights on?
Yeah.
We work with life science companies, medical device and pharmaceutical companies to help them with their business insights, recruitment of trials.
So they get the value out there.
They
do.
I
see.
That's right.
Genius.
Yes, and it works. And these life science companies
They need the help.
They need it. They need to, and look, they are spending so much on trials, and they are spending so much time and effort trying to find patients. You know what? The one thing I will tell you about pharma companies is that prior to coming to Verana Health, my background is actually inside providers. I spent a lot of time inside hospitals. My last many companies were working with hospitals. And what I can tell you about pharma companies is that they believe in helping the patient just as much as everyone else in the healthcare ecosystem. And in many cases, like some of the work we're doing right now, they can't find patients, for example, these rare disease trials that we're now in with them.
Sure.
And so
it's very frustrating.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. And you might have a modality that works, but you don't have a patient. Your recruitment is off.
Huge challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to find that patient. Huge challenge trying to get that patient enrolled. Huge challenge trying to find really robust inclusion-exclusion criteria. And we can do all of that through the EMR record. And now we have a genomics partner that's actually doing genetic testing at no cost on certain select inherited retinal diseases. That's our first entree into true genomic disease.
Yeah, there's a lot of gene therapy we saw yesterday at OIS, a lot of interesting stuff coming down the pike.
It's amazing. And I think there is so much innovation that can happen there, but again, no innovation is going to happen until you find the patient. That's what we do.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very good. So it's pretty agnostic to whatever widget or technology it is. You provide the patient that's going to be able to be used for the data.
Right.
Very good.
That's right. But I will add that we also have Trial Connect, which is a software in the cloud. It's a cloud-based software that allows the practice to both see what's happening at the practice level and understand what their care patterns look like, but ultimately also be able to identify the patients inside their own practice that meet certain inclusion-exclusion criteria. On the flip side, once they've decided, and the physician has decided they want to participate in a trial and want to consent to doing that, once all that has occurred, we can allow pharma companies to be able to start recruiting just those right patients.
Those sites, I see. Interesting.
That's right. So
you gotta bring that up on our lunch when we get together.
Done. We'll do it.
Okay, now,
Okay.
last, I know
Okay.
you gotta run, but
Right.
last but not least.
Yeah.
So we talked about this earlier. Part of my passion is what's the secret sauce of someone becoming very successful?
Oh,
like you?
interesting.
How do you
Yeah.
mentor the 20-year-old
Right.
that wants to say, that sees
You
this
know-
video or listens to the podcast, because by the way, it's gonna be a podcast.
So, right.
And how do I become you? I mean,
Right.
do I,
So
do
I
I
have-
have to go to Stanford or Harvard to get this thing?
No, right, no,
Right?
yeah, right. What you do is, and this is what I tell my kids, I have 3 kids, and they're 8, 6, and 2-year-old, and my 8-year-old is starting to get interested in this. He
Yeah.
loves the fact that his father's a CEO, and what I tell him, and it's an overused term, but follow your passion.
Yeah.
And passion is it becomes such a, what's the right word, almost cliche, but there's some truth to that. If you follow what you love, and I'll tell you right now, there were so many parts of my career. Look, I was an investment banker in healthcare M&A for a lot of years. I worked for the Clinton, I was head of health systems for the Clinton Foundation, living in Africa and India for a couple of years. I spent time running a big division at IMS Health, which became IQVIA for a while.
Yeah.
And then I ran 2 other healthcare data companies that I grew and sold. So the point is, if you look at that, it doesn't look like this, right?
No.
It looks like this. And it looks circuitous. And what ties that all together is passion.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I am a healthcare patient advocate first. That's what I love, and that's what I want to be doing, and that is everyone today at Verana Health as well. Everyone that comes to Verana is screened on that healthcare passion first. And when they pass that passion test, they get to go interview and see if they pass the content test as well.
Very good.
Yeah,
I know
thank
you
you.
gotta run. I can
I
talk
do.
to you for another hour.
Thank you.
But it's
Really
a
nice
pleasure.
talking to you.
We'll get together again.
We will.
Have a great meeting.
You too. Thank you.